So, can a husband be vulnerable with his wife without paying a big price? If we haven't yet met, my name is Mark Delaney. This is my wife, Adina. And I was about to make this video for men about how to be vulnerable with your wife. And I thought, I'm going to have my wife come join me for this conversation and just see what she will organically say in response to my thoughts. So back in the old cartoons, there used to be a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. In this case, I want to have a wife on this shoulder. And Adina, I just want you to give feedback to what I'm saying, because this is a huge thing for men. Okay. We're supposed to be vulnerable, but we feel like if we are, we're going to pay a price. I've talked to men who said, I was vulnerable. I opened up, and 10 years later, she's still checking in on me on what I said 10 years before. Do you, in your work with helping women and in your life experience, do you know how challenging it is for a man to be vulnerable with his wife? And from a wife's perspective, what do you think about that? What do you think about, why do you think it's so hard for a husband to be vulnerable with his wife?
I think it's primarily because you don't know how your wife's going to respond, and it's pretty important because it's a very important relationship.
Yeah, frankly, and I'm certainly not blaming wives for the fact that men aren't vulnerable. I'm not saying that men aren't vulnerable because of their wives. I think it's hard for any human to be vulnerable.
Right.
Do you think it's hard for women to be vulnerable?
I think it's easier for women to talk about it, but I think the action to make life change, to make it be better, that's what's hard. Like, we can talk about it and say, yeah, this and the other, and, kind of like coffee shop talk. But I don't think it's as easy for us when it comes to, we need to do this, change this, or whatever to make our lives different.
I think it's, for any human being, I think it's difficult to talk about what we think is wrong with us. Like, if there's something messed up in me, I think it's very hard to put words to that. I personally think that's just as hard for women as it is for men.
There's always something that holds you up somewhere. Everybody's got their, we'll call it a stopping point. Like, we can't go any deeper, or you can't go there. Like, everybody's got this stopping point of no more. Like, step back. Like, you're invading my space. Everybody's got that.
Yeah. It's hard for us to admit what's messed up with ourselves. So I've heard men oftentimes talk about how they talked about a struggle they've had, and then it changed how their wife saw them. They were kind of like the hero in a sort of way, but then he talked about a struggle he has, and now he feels like he's treated like he's a zero.
As you're saying that, it's like, when we fall in love and we get married, we're like so in love and okay, everything's great. And then I think maybe it's when our man shows his true self and, some area that's like, hey, I need to be vulnerable about this. I love my wife kind of thing. I think maybe it derails us a little bit because we kind of thought we were in this magical relationship where everything was great. And now this problem came up and you're like, blah, and you just don't want it. And you kind of react when things like that happen. You just act weird, whatever weird looks like.
Yeah, and no one prepares people for this. Nobody prepares a man for how his wife responds to him, and no one prepares a wife for
how to respond,
or how do we respond to the messes in each other's lives. Let's face it. If you have kids, if you have friends, like, messes come up, how do we respond to them? This is probably the ultimate frustration with every human being, is what do I do with my mess? And what do I do with your mess? I mean, this is the common story of all humanity. In our work with couples, I find myself over and over again telling people, there's nothing weird about the problem that you have in your marriage. You're just like millions of other couples. The difference is when some couples have a problem that is unveiled, Some couples are like, well, we're going to hide this until we die. And our marriage is forever changed. We don't like each other anymore, but for the sake of our kids and for the sake of God, we're going to stay together. We're not going to like it because there's this problem over here that we're hiding, but we're just going to hang on till we die.
Yeah.
Well, that's miserable. And then, of course, you have people that are like, as soon as something happens that's bad, we just give up and get divorced and run away. And that doesn't solve anything either.
It's like when you get married and you have these times where you can be vulnerable, it's like your opportunity to figure out how you're going to respond to it in a way that helps you to grow closer together, rather than like magnets that just, they're not the ones that connect, they repel, and it's like bam, and nobody wants this disconnect, if you will. We always want to be the ones that are the magnets are flipped around the right way and they go connect, and we want that, and we need it so much that we're so desperate. And I'm just saying, everyone needs that real connection. And I think that's part of the reason why we have a hard time saying what we're weak about, because we're afraid that it's going to make someone go, ooh, no, I don't want that anymore.
Yeah. Because, and why are we like that? It's human instinct.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of raised that way as a human being. If you do something wrong, it's like, what's the game at the pizza place where you take
whack-a-mole?
The whack-a-mole game? It's like, you ever feel like you're the mole? And every time you pop your head up, there's someone to go, there's something else wrong with you. And this is wrong with you. And you're this and you're that, and stop this and stop that. And it feels like, and frankly, I think sometimes as human beings, we are the person holding the hammer. Is it a hammer in the game?
Sure, call it a hammer.
It's a hammer. We're the person with the hammer towards other people. We do this with our kids. We do this with our spouse. And then your spouse or your child becomes the mole.
And
afraid to pop their head up.
They can't. Nobody can live like that and survive it in a healthy way. No one can. No one can.
There's no doubt in my mind that most of what holds us back as humans is not knowing what to do with the mess of ourselves. And then not knowing what to do with the mess of others who are close to us.
Yeah.
And our response to problems is almost 100% the larger problem. Because you have people that have a particular problem and they face it, overcome it, and thrive in life. But then you have a lot of other people that have the same exact problem, and the results are very different. And what's common is how we respond to the problem is the larger issue.
We're always looking for like a simple something that helps us to live our life stronger, healthier, better. And we love sharing that with people. And it's like, what is one thing that we can do to make it be better? It's like right now, what we're talking about is just, what if we worked on learning how to respond differently when someone comes to us with a weakness? In this situation, it could be our spouse or it could be our kids. It could be anyone, even at the grocery store. And if we kind of work on learning how to respond when someone's, I don't know, giving us any sort of scenario that we don't like, if we work on that, I think we begin to develop a muscle. And I think that's part of the battle, is just not responding in the same way we've always responded when someone comes to us with a weakness.
So let's finish by talking about two things. First of all, how do we respond to somebody when they share a problem with us? And then we'll talk about how to share our problems. Specifically, how does a man share his problems with his wife? But first of all, let's talk about how do you respond to somebody when they come to you with a weakness? How do we become better at being the person? Because if we don't respond well, what are they going to do?
They're going to shut up. They're not going to share anything else.
They're going to learn that it does not work to do that. Yeah. I'm going to clam up. I'll never open up again. And not just with you, but maybe with nobody.
Right.
This is the danger, like as a parent, like if your kids realize, oh, I can't be honest about stuff I'm dealing with, mom and dad. Well, they learn they can't be honest about it not just with mom and dad, but with anybody. It is really hard for a human being to open up about things that bother them, problems they have, addictions. It's really hard.
Yeah.
So if we become the kind of people that we're able to have an open heart and allow people to share their struggles without being shocked, without gasping, I think it's a really great gift that we offer people.
Yeah, and what if we pause just for a second? Because in that moment, there's going to be a whole lot of emotion, and there's going to be a fight between responding in a way that helps the other person and responding in a way that helps me to figure out what I'm doing in this scenario. And I just kind of think pausing a little bit is just like, okay, hang on a second. All right, how do I want to respond to this? Now I know how I'm naturally responding, and if I take just a beat, I think I can, I don't know, kind of cool it just a smidge and be like, okay, I'll focus on how it impacts me later. Right now, how about I listen, or whatever helps that person who's just sharing that awkward thing. What would I want if I was in that scenario? I wouldn't want you to judge me. I would want you to listen and care and understand that this took a lot of work to get to this point.
Yeah, listen and care. In our book that's coming out for men pretty soon, we have a rule at the beginning, and it talks about how in men's groups, if a man shares a problem, don't be his therapist. Like just the other day, I was in a conversation with a group of 4 men, and one man kept talking about problems he's having. And this guy to my right, it was like a machine gun. He was ready for the next advice the other guy needed to hear. And I'm like, you haven't even heard him. He's just mentioned a type of problem. And you're like, it's like a grenade of answers. Do this. Now do this. And it's like you haven't even heard him. Well, listen, if a person opens their heart with you and shares struggles they have, it is such a tender thing. It is such a hard thing to be quiet and to listen, to instead of having answers, relate to them. Like, how about relating to them? Because when someone has a problem, I think we are quite selfish or even egotistical to either be surprised or lob them a grenade answer, as if somehow we can fix people. Like, it's far better that we relate to them.
And I think, and love them. Like, you know what? I think the best human experience is when someone loves you, even though you have a mess.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Like, if someone loves me, even when they know that I'm messy, that is powerful, and I'm forever changed.
It's a great gift. If someone is opening their life to you, their heart, and they're like, I'm struggling with this, they're showing a lot of trust.
Yeah.
It's such a great gift.
Yeah.
They're showing you so much love and trust.
They're saying our relationship is important enough for me to do this. That's huge.
Yeah.
You don't want to shut that door. You want that relationship to stay important.
So I want to say this to men. You need to be vulnerable with your wife, but I want to give you a simple thing to think about. Here's what I think you should do. I want you to imagine a field or your backyard of your life. You have weeds growing up in that field. The weed is going to represent specific struggles you might have as a man. Let's use gambling as the problem. Oftentimes as men, we feel like what we need to do is go to our wife and say, honey, once a week I've been going to the casino and I've been gambling. Now, I'm not saying you should hide that. That's not my point. And I'm not saying that that we should hide our problems from each other. Here's what I want to say. If you look at a yard and there's a weed growing, what's the bigger problem, the weed or the soil that weed came from? In this metaphor, the ground, the soil, the seeds, the root system, that represents the bigger problem from which comes the result, which is gambling. Here's the initial thing I would say to any man. You must not hide your gambling. Share it with a friend. Whatever the weed is in your life, some kind of habit, something, some kind of substance you're turning to, you must tell a friend. Dude, can I tell you what I'm struggling with? Recently, and talk about the weed. It is absolutely imperative that you're vulnerable with your wife as well, but you can be vulnerable with your wife in a different sort of way, and that is sharing the soil which represents your heart. Because remember, the gambling is only the result of a struggle. Your wife is much better at talking about the heart of your problem than the weed of your problem. If you just go to your wife and say, I've been gambling, well, how's she going to know what to do with that?
Yeah. It's going to freak me out. And what do I do?
It's scary. It's money. It's a casino. Like, what kind of bad things are happening there? And is our house going to be foreclosed on? Like, what do you do with that? So, but if you go to your wife and you say, honey, my life has felt so empty recently. Just my heart, I just feel like I'm going through the motions. Work is sucking the life out of me every day. It's just like, I'm just getting hit from all sides at work. 9 hours a day, I'm just getting pummeled. And I don't have any, I'm just like, I just feel like I'm going through the motions. And I just wanted to tell you.
As a woman, when I hear that, I feel like, man, like you just connected with me in a very deep level. And now I'm like all in on just like, I don't know, loving you and supporting you and whatever. It gave me a completely different response than if you were talking about the details of this problem. It really did. Because you chose to connect with me on a very deep heart level. That meant something.
See, I think wives are much better at being able to support the heart if a man will share the heart. See, the gambling thing is really not the heart. Telling someone I've been gambling, that's really not the heart. That's just the weed that shows itself. To share your heart is to share beneath the surface what's going on inside of here. And wives are much more equipped to be able to help with what's going on in here. Whereas if we just go to them and say, I fill in the blank, here's this habit I have, here's this behavior, I have this temptation. Wives are like, what are they supposed to do with that?
Like our default is to control things. So we could super control that. And then it looks so all sorts of messy.
And then every day texting, are you gambling today? I'm tracking you on your phone. You drove by the casino. Were you thinking about? And then I walk in the door.
All levels of weird. All levels of weird.
Yeah, because we're all talking about the weed. It's not about the weed. It's about the soil.
When you're talking about describing like your soil, like the heart, like there are times like I don't even know what my heart is feeling or why, like something is weird or off. Sometimes even just saying, hey, I just feel like I've been off. The last 4 weeks, like maybe you don't know that your job is sucking the life out of you, whatever. But if you even just say, hey, I just feel off. I just feel like, I feel like there's this, I just want to have something to chase. And if you just make it be vague and a wrestling because that's all you know, like just go with that. Like you don't have to have it figured it out. I mean, because I don't have things figured out when I'm in the middle of a mess. It's usually muddy and messy, and the mud's covering up something that I'll eventually see later.
That is profound and beautiful. It's hard for us to share our weaknesses. Well, oftentimes when we're in a struggle, it's hard to put words to it. And then we tend to isolate ourselves and not share our heart and close off. And
because we don't want words to say.
And that makes things worse. So I think that's a profound thought, and we'll end on that. Sometimes you just got to look at your spouse, and sometimes even your friends or maybe your coworker, and just admit, right now I'm just off. That is a beautiful thing for one human to say to another, because sometimes when we're off, we start to act out. And when we act out, it can look like we're mad at people. And the people around us can be like, oh, I did something. They're mad at me. They're not themselves. Like I've done something, and that's not true. And so when you're especially when you're married to somebody, if you're off your game, instead of leaving your spouse to wonder if they did something to you, which is a normal way to think, just say to them, darling, and this can go either way. I just feel like I'm off, and I'm just. I'm okay, but I'm off. And it might be that you need something like a few trips to the gym. You might need a night out with some good friends to have some fun. You might, there's a lot of things.
You might need to take half a day off work and just go on a date, while the kids are
With
at school
each
or
other.
something.
Yes.
Like be creative. Like, okay, all right, you know what? Let's change things up.
So thanks for watching. If you're still watching, my wife and I, we love to serve like a maid and a butler to people in their lives. All of our lives matter so much. The impact of your life, the importance of your relationship and your family, it is so important. And I just want to leave you with a thought to encourage you that any life venture is going to involve struggle. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong venture. Any relationship is going to have struggle. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong relationship. Struggles can be used for good. So sometimes you just need to say to each other, I'm just off.
I'm just off.
Friends, thanks for listening. And until next time, I want you to know this. Your life has a purpose. You can know that purpose, and you can be set free from anything that's holding you back from living it out boldly. Now go take on the day.